Mutoro. Wali de na ke wali ma. Ezo ma de ku. Ye di mama. Na mutoro.
Mutoro ya atali muna mulira.
Wali bete na na ko ko bebe. E wali na na ile. E pour que le de pour tu ba ko. Bi ba mi. Ndi na le ba ko mi te tu metre. Parce que non, be na ga ki mo ba lo be ne.
Na kan lamma kai ya da. Ki ba shi. Da ka so da. Da han kura tri. Da pièce ça. Ba ki ma shi.
Na ga remarquer chaque année foyer ira domaine de beira. Chaque année foyer ira domaine de ba ira.
Cette zone représente l'école pour le village. C'est ici les enfants apprennent à lire et à écrire.
My name is Alpha Amadou Shalom. Currently we went to KAKOSSA and we attended some different sessions of discussions with local communities, indigenous people, and various local elected people. Our aim is to strengthen civil society actors, indigenous people, and local communities' engagement in climate action through a better participation of young, women, and vulnerable people to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change negotiation process. We have this opportunity on Climate Ambition Support Alliance Opportunity Fund, the CASA. This is not just an opportunity for us, it's also the door to open civil society in Guinea's actions to much more climate actions. The set of challenges and gaps we will address are grouped into a set of three main points, namely the environmental context and threat analysis. In KAKOSSA rural community area, this is an island close to the capital Conakry, which is also a peninsula. The impacts of anarchic construction along the Conakry seafront show that the area faces a multitude of environmental challenges that threaten the ecosystem and its various inhabitants. About the concern for the management and conservation of biodiversity and marine ecosystems, we have noticed that there is a lack of total species monitoring and no exact figure for the number of species present today in the KAKOSSA zone. A single executive act as head of the forestry cantonment, and there is a total absence of a natural conservation unit, demonstrating a lack of technical training for volunteer environment. A single executive act as head of the forestry cantonment, and there is a total absence of a natural conservation unit, demonstrating a lack of technical training for volunteer environmentalists. Conservation activities on the island are not carried out, and the mangrove and other unprotected marine areas are under great pressure from exploitation, which could lead to the extinction of several unidentified species in fauna and flora. A shortage of community development workers to help implement development policies and environmental standards. In addition, the island's precarious situation means that the managers assigned to this area are much more likely to be found in the capital than on the island. What's more, the island's permanent problems are, among others, there is a lack of infrastructure to house people who are working for the island, and no administrative block to provide them with a legal and regulatory framework for their work. No state agricultural development program, nor for the vast rice growing plants, coupled with low levels of external funding to support development aid and the fight against climate change. Through the NGO Alphabet, we have observed the involvement of local communities in the search for sustainable solutions to climate-related difficulties, although they are not fulfilling their expectations in terms of fruitful exchange. As a result, there is still a gap to be filled in terms of collaboration and coordination between the island's indigenous peoples and the technical and financial partners who could take an interest in the area if the right strategies are defined to combat poverty on the one hand and the harmful effects of climate change on the other. weak citizen participation in the island's governance due to the lack of monitoring and implementation of the local development plan drawn up for period 2022 to 2026. We have also a weak organization of community assemblies due to a lack of financial resources to enable discussion of the challenges and vulnerabilities of the island's communities and to pass on to national public bodies and technical and financial partners. The clauses attached to these assemblies are also another situation of pity. Lack of resources to implement the conservation initiatives developed and their local development plan, proposing the creation of a community forest to conserve migratory species. The need to promote marine microclimate on the island is therefore a top priority. This island has not been developed as a tourist destination. Even though opportunities exist on a national-wide scale, a vast perimeter of beach runs all around the island, places that could accommodate tourists and holiday makers from Conakry and Guinea's major cities by all possible means of transport, sea and land. Weak community support for economic interest groups, and many agricultural groups are in the process of abandoning farming following the rise of the ocean, which has led to saline intrusion over vast agricultural areas. No integration of marine conservation issues into local planning, local development plans, and annual investment plan. Lack of accountability. There is a huge lack of accountability. There is a lack of communication between indigenous development stakeholders and technical and financial partners, which means that no link is made in climate actions. And elected representatives do not feel obliged to be accountable for the few agricultural activities they undertake, nor for the abusive exploitation of mangroves, which inevitably results in the loss of land as a result of salt water invading the plains. Human pressures on the island's environment. We have an uncontrolled bushfires and carbonization of multiple origins, combined with the construction of the mineral port by the Rio Tinto or Simfer company, make fishing totally impracticable in certain areas where it used to be recurrent. Poverty in the area, illiteracy, and a failure to take into account the economic potential of the vast agricultural plains and the large expanses of sand at the beach are forcing population to accept pressure on the mangrove for salt production and the sale of firewood. The uncontrolled exploitation of timber hunting, illegal fishing of fry, clearing of sensitive areas, and uncontrolled bushfires of multiple origins, crop clearing, uncontrolled hunting techniques, honey harvesting in prohibited areas, etc., are forms of exogenous pressure that the widespread on the island. Poverty in the area, illiteracy, and a lack of awareness of the island's economic potential if it were to be properly exploited, if only through agricultural development and the construction of dikes to protect the island from rising salt and sea water. This saline intrusion is another huge problem in the island. The proliferation of human activities that are detrimental to the sustainable conservation of biodiversity, such as livestock grazing on the periphery of the community forest site, the difficulty of agricultural production by women's crops for resale to foreigners, or even ensuring food self-sufficiency. Farming activities in the wetlands, which are intended to serve as shelter for the inhabitants, could lead to flooding and the displacement of climatically displaced people, as on the nearby island of Kabak. The repeated and uncontrolled hunting of all kinds of species represents a real danger to the sustainable management of an island that normally depends solely on nature for its existence. The practice of slash and burn agriculture with increasingly short fallow periods, which leads to erosion, will not only cause famine but to also make farming impossible. The migration of the population, mainly young people in search of a livelihood, has led to new waves of people moving from the island to the country's major cities, making it more difficult to find a lasting solution to the farming trade that used to be the pride of the locality. Not to mention the lack of manpower for any other economic interest grouping. Poaching and illegal fishing threaten animal species, including those with international conservation status under IUCN and CITES. Abusive logging, timber and fuel wood to meet the ever-increasing energy demands on an island with no electricity generating infrastructure. Overgating, which drastically reduces plant cover, exposing the soil to drying out and salinization, and intoxicating arable soils. Water supply problems in market gardening perimeters prevent the multiplication of production and annual harvest. The failure to construct boreholes provides non-drinkable water and makes water supply increasingly difficult. Although Alphabet is an NGO that can be of service, it can in no way take the place of the state. As such, the project that we are mentioning does not pretend to tackle all these issues, but rather to address the main difficulties that the CASA fund can help to resolve at grassroots level in order to reduce them all over the long term. About the socio-economic context, the island's current situation is characterized by widespread and extensive degradation of forest and wildlife resources. This situation is mainly due to competition between the satisfaction of forest production needs, timber and non-timber, and food needs, land use of the one hand, a poor assessment of the importance of agricultural areas and vast beach areas in the national and local economy, and the proliferation of salt production. During the dry season, the people of KAKOSSA live off the exploitation of imported products, fishing for small fish, and hunting, which is becoming increasingly impossible. During this period, the community's activities create a great deal of pressure on the island, with some not knowing how to reconcile their activities with environmental imperatives. In order to offer an ideal living environment and meet the expectations of vulnerable populations with a view to involving season to help control flooding on either side of agricultural perimeters, help develop market garden crops to supply young people with local foodstuffs instead of those imported from the capital, Conakry. This activity will generate an economic profit and keep women and young people busy during the dry season, help create and support the operation of certain economic interest groups, farming groups, and women's groups. These economic interest groups would like to benefit from Kenyan beehives, training and equipment for soap making and textile coloring, and barbed wire for market gardening. The construction of improved wells or boreholes on sites predefined by the beneficiaries to provide drinking water that can be used for agricultural production in the dry season. To popularize the culture of transplanting mangrove seedlings accessible to them, installation of nurseries for the beginning with rapid growth and long-term production over 15 to 30 years. reduce the livestock agricultural conflict by creating a large market gardening perimeter to protect the livestock, provision of additional barbed wire to cover the fields crops area, create a community forest for the community to provide them with conservation area for fauna and flora species and create a microclimate from which they can benefit, and stop all activities that pose a threat to mangroves and seagrass beds. Develop fish ponds in the natural area in the sea inlets to enable them to grow salt water fish or other aquatic species. Field consultations and analysis of the socio-economic context of the project area revealed certain perceptions on the part of indigenous population. The absence of a fundraising strategy due to the limited fundraising skills of officials from the ministries of development, and above all the need to include KAKOSSA in the priorities of regional planning policies and agricultural and silvopastoral projects. Insufficient and inadequate training for the local population and public service providers. Poor distribution of resources which favors bad governance. Inadequate infrastructure. The lack of infrastructure has destroyed the normally short run of irrigation system, preventing rainwater from being discharged from agricultural fields during the dry season and allowing salt water to flow back in. Plus a lack of agricultural production equipment. Techniques remain rudimentary. Local communities limited ownership of environmental and sustainable development policies, characterized by their low level of responsibility in decision making and in the fight against climate change. Inadequate information on solar energies and ecological transition to renewable and sustainable energies among local communities. This prompted alphabets to call for an understanding of the lack of access to affordable, low-carbon, sustainable energy for vulnerable populations, while at the same time contributing to the area's economic development. The imminent use of solar energy to support the education of young people who struggle to review their lessons in the evening due to lack of light. The conservation of fruit from the fishing industry and citrus fruits, which perish for lack of electricity for storage, result in huge losses and wastage. This forces growers, fishermen, and other hikes to other economic interest groups to sell their products quickly, without understanding the commercial dynamics in the capital. This in turn increases insecurity, leaving people in constant need of help. Finally, let's talk about tourism. The tourism sector appears to be an underexploited economic sector, which nevertheless has great potential in terms of national tourism, given the landscapes and visible biodiversity. Unfortunately, the lack of promotion of the sites and the absence of a promotional strategy prevents this sector from growing. As far as international tourism is concerned, the current political context does not offer any real opportunities in the short term, combined with the long-term development of income-generating activities. This project should enable the Ministry of Tourism, investors and communicators in the tourism sector to take ownership of the issue of developing tourism potential and explore opportunities. The real shortcomings in current communications need to be overcome if this sector is to attract investors and tourists to the island of KAKOSSA, combined with greater involvement of local population in management, should enable us to sketch our proposals at this level, site, circuits, etc. In particular, the aim is to help improve the knowledge of farming groups operating in the seafood harvesting sector to strengthen their ability to offer quality services as tourist guides, and to encourage the gradual installation of tourism structures that could receive tourists looking for quiet, stable places to spend their vacation. Now the third point will be socio-ecological context. The degradation of natural resources is visible in the mangrove zone and is at the roots of the alarming acceleration in saline intrusion due to the annual rate of clearing of forest massive for rice and salt growing activities. To compensate for the uncertainties of food production, which does not provide families with a stable income. In the dry season, salt growers make excessive use of firewood due to a lack of sustainable, suitable program and techniques. This complementary activity leads to overexploitation of wood. This fuel is needed to extract salt from the brine obtained by filtering the salt soil. In 1956, as an example, this mangrove covered 350,000 hectares. Today it covers just 250,000 hectares. Since then, the annual loss represents 4.2% of the surface area, or 450 hectares per year. In Guinea, deforestation of the mangrove swamps continues. The mangrove is home to many plant and animal species and their habitats. Natural fertility and productivity are very high. The riparian communities are mainly Sosoe, Baga, Landuma, and Naloi. They also include Fulanis people and Mandingos and migrant foresters. Concerned about the fragility of this ecosystem, this NGO Alphaverse had already initiated a project and would like to get fundings from any partners and funders to protect and support programs like these to preserve mangrove and ecosystems all around this place. The rational management of the natural resources of the Guinean coastline and encouraging active participation by women in the promotion of solar salt. As for problem, we notice to produce 1 kilogram of salt, we will need 3.1 kilogram of wood. And to make traditional salt production one of the direct causes of mangroves destruction. As for solution, we propose that Guinean salt factory technology using solar, dark islands, solar energy, and wind to evaporate the brine is an innovative system that can be used and an alternative and an economic, much more useful and ecological solution for salt production. This was our tour in KAKOSSA, and we hope that you liked the content, and then we hope that you will take a look on KAKOSSA. Thank you.